Councillor Silvitz, we are live streaming.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Clerk. Good afternoon, everybody. In chambers and online, welcome to the Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting for November the 10th. I am your chair, Karen Silvitz. Accessibility Advisory Committee meetings are being held in a hybrid meeting format at this time. The public can observe meetings of council and committees by attending in person in the council chambers, or by viewing the live stream of the open session part of the meetings, which can be accessed on the city's website or on the city's YouTube page. Please note that we have received no regrets for this afternoon's meeting. The public had the opportunity to submit written correspondence regarding agenda items by email to the clerk's office, or written correspondence received by noon yesterday would have been included on the agenda, but there was none received. The public also had the opportunity to apply to appear as either an in-person or electronic delegation by noon yesterday to be included on the agenda, but no delegation requests were received. As the chair of the committee, I will now call the meeting to order. And if you hang on one moment, I have to just switch here. Okay. And just as an FYI, today we have in council chambers, committee members, and I'm going to have to get your last names. Committee members Ted Morisugu, Lawrence Rafeman, Yue Lin, and Simon Walden. And online is myself, Councillor Carol Davidson from Ward 1. And we have also Shala Yagubian and Lopa Banerjee, our Vice Chair. She's on call, but she's not on video, but she is with us. So welcome, everybody. Now, sorry, I just have to jump backwards and forwards here when I'm virtual, but as you can hear, I've got a little bit of a sniffle and I didn't want to come in under any circumstances. So let me get back to my agenda. Just give me one moment. I don't have my printed one with me, unfortunately. Okay, here we go. So the meeting is called to order. May I have someone on committee please raise their hand to adopt the agenda? Shala, thank you very much. Moved by Shala. All those in favor, please raise your hands. I believe that carries. Thank you. I see Sherry Caldwell has also joined us virtually. Does anybody on committee have any disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Just raise your hand if you do. Seeing none, Mr. Deputy Clerk. Agenda item number 4.1 is the minutes of our previous meeting, Minutes Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting, held September the 28th, 2023. A, that the minutes of Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting, AAC number 0323, held September 28th, 2023, be adopted. As I always say, I trust all members of committee have read your minutes. And if I could have someone move that, please. Someone on committee, Councillor Davidson, thank you very much. And any questions on the minutes from last meeting? Seeing none, all those in favor of adoption, please raise your hands. Can't see you all, but that carries. Okay, we have no delegations today. We have scheduled business today, and today should be very, very interesting committee. We have 2 presentations by staff, and then at the end of our agenda, I'm going to add some new business where we're going to have another presentation given to us. So let's start with 6.1. Implementing the 2022 Parks Plan presentation by Michelle Darby, Manager Park and Natural Heritage Planning. Please note this is a 20-minute presentation. Ms. Darby, the floor is yours.
Apologies, through the chair, just for the public record, we are actually adopting the agenda with an additional item of business, which is the President Shaw, I'm just going to bring it up on the screen for
okay, thank you.
everyone to, yeah, just so that we can stay within. So this was the agenda with the following addition, which is a presentation by Maya and Ziv from RH Mobility in regards to programs for park accessibility. So that is the additional business that we are adding.
Thank you. So do I need to take a vote again, or are we good?
Well, we can. Why don't we take a vote again, just so everyone knows what they are voting on? So, if committee member oh, what her name right? My apologies. Yagubian is okay with moving that, then we can take another vote.
Okay, Shala, are you good with moving that as well?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so members of committee, we're going to take that vote one more time just to make sure that we're doing everything legitimately and the minutes reflect it. So all in favor for the adoption of the agenda, including item 6.4 programs for park accessibility, a presentation by Maya and Ziv, RH Mobility. Please raise your hands if you agree. Thank you. Anybody against? No, seeing none. I do believe that carries. Okay, let's get back there. I see Ms. Dobby. Welcome to our Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting, and we look forward to your presentation.
Great, thank you. And thank you to the chair, Professor Davidson, along with members of the Accessibility Advisory Committee for having me here today to provide you with this presentation. As was noted before, my name is Michelle Dobby. I'm the Manager of Park and Natural Heritage Planning with the city, and I'll be providing a presentation today on implementing the 2022 Parks Plan. Next slide. This presentation includes three components. The first is some background on our 2022 Parks Plan, which was approved last year in June. And then second and third items are just briefly some information on our one ongoing revitalization master plan at Mill Pond Park and our upcoming master plan on Richmond Green, which we hope to begin in 2024. And looking for some early input from the committee on that towards the end of my presentation today. Next slide. Just as background, the city initiated the review of the Parks Plan, Recreation Plan, and the Culture Plan in 2020. And that was in response to a number of financial sustainability matters to ensure the new plans that the city developed were utilizing an integrated life cycle planning approach. And specifically as it relates to the park plan, that the new parks plan included consideration of understanding the park and recreational needs of residents in higher density developments, investigating the use of linear parks in higher density areas along the centers and corridors to better direct residents to the established parks, which are largely off the growth corridor, and designing and building more cost-effective parks. The city retained a multidisciplinary consulting team to help us with this review, which was completed between 2021 and 2022. Next slide. As most of you know, the city delivers parks across three different departments, as is shown on this slide. So our team, Park and Natural Heritage Planning, is within the left side of this slide, the Planning and Building Services Department. And our main role is to secure land and analyze facility needs. And we do this through the preparation of plans, strategies, and studies. In the middle, we have the infrastructure delivery section, which is responsible for designing and constructing parks. And you had the presentation from Mohammed, I understand, earlier this year about that. And then on the right side of the slide, the Parks Infrastructure and Services section in the Community Services Department is responsible for maintaining and operating our parks. Next slide. Many of the matters related to planning for parkland are outlined in legislation. And two of the key pieces of legislation are highlighted on this slide, with the first being the Planning Act. The Planning Act sets out municipal parkland provision rates in terms of how much land or how much cash in lieu of land a municipality can require through the development process. These rates are consistent across Ontario, and unfortunately were recently quite significantly reduced through Bill 23. So as you can see kind of at the top part of this slide, what's called the alternative parkland rate was previously 1 hectare per 300 units with no cap. Now, after Bill 23 came into effect, we are working with a rate of 1 hectare per 600 units with a land cap and a cash cap of a maximum of 10 or 15% of the amount of land that is being developed. That is placing some significant constraints on how we implement our 2022 Parks Plan. The second piece of legislation just highlighting is the AODA Act, which you're all familiar with, and has the one standard, which is very important for parkland, the Design for Public Spaces standard, which is one of 5 standards under that act. And that standard requires that parks built after 2015 be accessible per section 80-5. Mohammed probably spoke to you about that when he presented. Next slide. So just to give you a little bit of a better understanding of the funding implications of Bill 23 that I had noted in my last slide, just broadly, there is both a land and a revenue implication of Bill 23 in terms of our park projects within the city. And the right side of this slide is information that was presented to council earlier this year in January in terms of the reductions in forecasted revenue that are resulting from that bill. So you can see with respect to parkland, 61% reduction. So unfortunately, this bill is having significant impacts in terms of how we can best implement our parks plan. Next slide. Just to get back to our parks plan review, we did follow our typical process between 2021 and 2022 to arrive at the plan that we are now implementing today. We began in the spring and fall of 2021 with background research and analysis, including a comprehensive community consultation process. We had record consultation during that process, even though majority was online during COVID, but still hit records in terms of responses. So that was great to see. We moved on from that to develop key directions based on the input we received. Drafted a parks plan towards the spring of 2022, including holding a virtual open house, and then brought forward the final plan for council approval in June of 2022, which is now the plan that we're implementing. And then followed that by bringing forward the parkland dedication bylaw, which is a bylaw that allows us to collect land and cash within the municipality for parkland purposes. Next slide. Our parks plan is organized in 7 chapters, which are outlined on this slide here. It moves from introduction, planning context, some information about the existing system. And then chapter 4 and 5 are where it outlines our service level standards for outdoor facilities, the amount of parkland that we need based on the population that is coming to 2031. And chapter 6, a new chapter, very exciting in terms of how we're going to improve and enhance the system. And then chapter 7, how we will implement the plan. The next few slides, I'm going to briefly go through just generally what's in each of these chapters. So I will go to that now. Next slide. Chapter 1 introduces the exceptional park system that the city has and that we continue to win awards for, which is very exciting. And a number of key directions in terms of how we will be enhancing that system as the city urbanizes. Next slide. There are 4 guiding principles in our 2022 Parks Plan, and they are to expand the system, to improve the system in terms of its function, to better connect the system, especially to the larger greenway system, and to design for flexible multi-use parks that support that more year-round use. All of these principles direct the vision for the city's park system, which is outlined in the next chapters of the plan. Next slide. Chapter 2 of the plan outlines the planning context within which the plan is operating. So namely, this is a community that continues to grow. We have a growth pattern that is shifting towards intensification through a series of centers and corridors. So we're moving inwards and upwards as a city rather than outwards in terms of our growth pattern, as was the case before. We have a largely aging demographic, which is putting pressure to deliver services for residents age 55 plus. And we have a large commuter population, placing pressure on prime time and self-scheduled activities. Next slide. Chapter 3 outlines the city's existing park system and the parkland hierarchy. And as you can see on the map on the right-hand side of this slide, we are quite lucky to have a system that is relatively evenly distributed across the concession blocks, which is the way that the city grew out up to this point in time, primarily. And generally, because we saw population densities that were relatively even across the municipality up to this point in time as well. Next slide. But this trend is going to change as the city continues to intensify and is subject to the new Bill 23 constraints. So as you can see, the comparative maps on this slide, 2021, we have an average park area per person of 15.6 square meters. As we move forward in time to 2031, that will reduce to approximately 14.8 square meters of parkland per person living in the city. And we will feel it the most on the Yonge Street corridor, mostly south of Elgin Mills, which is where the kind of oblong shape is there on the map. Those areas oftentimes will have even less park area per person because of how much density will be coming to those areas in the future. Next slide. Chapter 4 of the plan, very exciting, recommends that a lot of the outdoor recreational facilities that we all know and love in our park system will be maintained in terms of the service level to respond to the trends and demand that we're seeing. And also very happy to highlight that one of the service levels maintained is to create 2 additional playgrounds with barrier-free features, one for the north and one for the south, to supplement the features that we have in central Richmond Hill currently at Crosby Park. Next slide. Chapter 4 also outlines a number of our facilities that will increase in terms of the service level standard to respond to the trends and the demand that we found through this study. And just a few listed on this slide: pickleball, all the rage these days. A lot of people interested in that. We have the pop-up courts now at Richmond Green. Off-leash dog areas also increasing. Outdoor fitness stations, very popular with a lot of folks. Outdoor skating became very big during COVID for sure. And then 2 new facilities, which are new to Richmond Hill, but provided in a lot of more urban municipalities: small scale splash spots and small scale skate spots. Next slide. Chapter 5 summarizes the city's parkland needs to 2031. And this is based on maintaining our service level provision that was outlined in our previous parks plan, the 2013 parks plan, and a total population projection of 39,100 people to 2031. And as you can see at the bottom of this slide, the city has secured a number of lands that we need out to 2031 already, close to 24 hectares already, mostly in North Leslie and West Gormley through the Planning Act approvals that we have there. And we'll be looking to secure an additional approximately 29 hectares in order to best serve the population that's coming, the 39,000 people that are coming. Next slide. Chapter 6, this is a new chapter, very exciting, about improving and enhancing the parkland system by creating that more connected urban open space system. And we'll do this by creating new bridges, new crossing enhancements, new streetscape enhancements that'll be used to better knit together the parkland system. Next slide. And one example of such an enhancement is our ongoing master plan for the Mill Pond Park area, which is our great natural oasis in the center of Richmond Hill. We do have new lands on Regent Street that we acquired to connect Stavert Park over to Mill Pond so that it reads and functions as one park now. And one of the desires that came through loud and clear as part of this project was the need for a primary spine trail that connected from the south all the way up to the north, and then also provided crossing enhancements across Regent Street and Mill Street to better connect the trail system and people to the parking facilities south of Mill as well. Next slide. This is our other enhancement project, which will begin in 2024, which is the Richmond Green Revitalization Master Plan. And many of you know Richmond Green, it is our primary sporting and events park in the city. It will not change. We're still going to be the sporting and events park. So don't be sad, you know, it's staying as that as we revitalize it, but just hopefully it will function better once we're done the revitalization. And this is one of the things we wanted to get your input on today. So next slide. And this is the conclusion of my presentation. So even though we haven't started, as I said, the Richmond Green Revitalization Master Plan, we do have a real interest in hearing from this committee. Mind you, we are all recognizing the fiscal constraints imposed on us by Bill 23, so might not be able to do all of the desires that yourself or the community raise as part of this project, or it might be phased, like we have to do with a number of our projects these days. But I am ending by asking this committee, what areas of Richmond Green do you feel could most benefit from accessibility enhancements as part of the revitalization, so that we can use that information when we begin this project in 2024. That is the end of my presentation. So looking forward to your input on that.
Thank you, Ms. Darby. That's so interesting. And it's always such, to me, our parks and our parkland and our greenways and trailways are, you know, some of the very best that we have to offer. So I'm so pleased to bring this to bring this to us. I want to also just acknowledge that Ward 2 Councillor Scott Thompson has joined us. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Okay, so what I need a member of committee, please, to bring this forward so we can have it on the floor for discussion. Shala, I see your hand raised. Would you bring item 6.1 forward?
The reason I raised my hand, I thought that maybe when I asked for the input, I thought that it must be a time to just say something about the project.
Yeah, no.
If it's not, it's okay.
Okay, no, we will get to that. Okay, can
Sure.
I have a member of committee please raise their hand to bring this item forward? Councillor Davidson, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, so hands raised, please, either virtually. And Deputy Clerk Ban, if you can please tell me if anybody raises their hands in council chambers, which I will not be able to see. Okay. I see there. It's Simon, right? So Simon has raised his hand. So hold on, Simon. Shala had her hand up first. So Shala, I'm going to go to you first.
Thank you very much.
Sorry.
One moment, Shala.
Yeah.
One moment.
One moment. Sorry. Just apologies. Through the chair, I didn't realize that there would be staff were going to be asking for comments. So if Councillor Davidson, if you're good with just the additional change here. So we had it originally that presentation would be received, but as staff would look for comments and all comments before back.
That's good. All good. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Back to business. Okay, Shala, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you. when you mentioned about thank you very much for the very informative presentation. When you talk about the facilities, there was nothing mentioned about the washrooms. And I was wondering if there is something that I can add about this and ask you a question about this part.
You may, through me. Go ahead,
Sure.
Shala.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I was wondering, in so many of the places that I go, even though, for example, like Lake Wilcox is the new one, they means that they did the renovation and everything new. But there are most of the places, they have two different washrooms for accessibility, one for male, one for female. But unfortunately, some of the places, even though after the recent renovation, they don't have the all genders or family washroom. So some people, when they have a need accessibility, they need some support. If the support is female, if I go with my husband, I am not able to go to the male washroom to help him. And some people, they need some help in the washroom. So there are that part that we needed, that I think that in those places. And then another thing also is if there is a family washroom, the good thing, they have a change table, which the person with accessibility and disability, they can use that chair as well. That's my the point that I want to just bring it up.
Thank you, Shala. Ms. Darby, are you able to respond?
So in terms of Lake Wilcox, we have heard that comment about the need for an all gender / family washroom. And we do expect to add that into the scope of work for what's called phase 3 of the Lake Wilcox Park Master Plan project that's coming up in the capital plan in the next few years. That is where that issue is now. Just in terms of your general question on washrooms, it's not a service level standard that we have in our parks plan. So it is site by site that we deal with the matter of how many washrooms, what type of washrooms. So it is good when people come out as part of our park projects to let us know what types of washrooms are desired in a particular park. But that comment has been heard, and we are going to be looking at that in the future in phase 3.
Thank you.
Anything else, Shala?
No, thank you. That's all. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ms. Dobby. Okay, our next person online is Simon Waldman. Go ahead, Simon.
Thanks for the presentation, Michelle. In the plan, you mentioned that parks that were built before 2015 aren't necessarily falling under the purview of the AODA. Is there any, despite limited budget, any attempt to retrofit some of the surface areas and pathways in the older parks, especially in higher density neighborhoods?
Great question. Ms. Dobby?
Sure. So we do have, as part of our capital plan, repair and replacement projects for our existing parks. And as we are able to afford to do those projects, we are bringing them up to current standard in terms of the requirements of the AODA Act and the section that I noted in my presentation. It is bit by bit, unfortunately, because of our funding constraints, but we are getting there bit by bit. Yes.
Thank you. Simon, is there anything further?
That's it. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anybody else in council chambers who has a question?
Through the chair, Lawrence, committee member Richmond does have.
Okay, thank you. Lawrence Raifman, you're next. Go ahead.
Hi. Again, thank you. Listening to some of the plans that were adopted, I guess up in 2022, I noticed there was no mention of any type of outdoor swimming pool. And I'm just wondering if anyone had requested that in the preliminary work that was being done and looking into the types of things that Richmond Hill residents would like.
Thank you, Lawrence. Ms. Darby?
We didn't hear really, I don't remember any comments on outdoor swimming pools. We did hear about additional indoor swimming pools. And that is something that is covered in the new combined recreation and culture plan, which is under the community services department. And I don't know if they are coming to present on that later, perhaps. But that's maybe a question for them on the additional indoor swimming facilities that the city will be providing.
Okay, well, remember that. Lawrence, does that answer your question? Do you have anything further?
No, it just was kind of a shame because I know Newmarket has an outdoor public pool. Thornhill has one. It would have been nice if Richmond Hill would have been able to offer that to the residents as well. But I understand the financial constraints now would make that very difficult. So thank you for the answer.
Yeah, thank you, Lawrence. I agree with you. I've had that discussion with community services for many years, and where could we, is it possible? But it's always been a major budgetary hurdle, and as you say, and I completely agree with you, it now becomes even more so. But it is, I can assure you that it is on the in the minds of our community services department staff members who are responsible to bring it forward to council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence. Okay, let's see. Virtually. First round, anybody wants to say anything here? Not seeing anything. Okay, so I've just got a few things to say. Thank you very much again, Ms. Darby, for the presentation. I'm sure my council colleagues, Councillor Davidson and Councillor Thompson, have the same reaction that I do when we see that revenue loss, that dollar figure revenue loss as a result of Bill 23 coming forward. And you had a total there in one of your first slides of almost $330 million is going to be a shortfall as a result of Bill 23. I wonder if Premier Ford has ever asked any questions about that, how he would answer it. How can you possibly think or say that is a positive? Because it's not, especially when we are mandated to grow our urban centers and grow our population and affordable housing and all of that. So that I find that number shocking. And then also the fact that we have, I see your hand, Councillor Davidson, thank you. The other slide that you had was for the hectares available or hectares to come. And Sherry, I see you. We currently have about 50%, if I looked at it correctly, of what we require. However, there is still going to be there's going to be quite the loss between 29 hectares that we will have by, I think you said next year, to the 53.5 hectares that are going to actually need to be available. And this is a very difficult discussion because, as my council colleagues know, there is no more open available space in Richmond Hill. The only real estate we have is in the sky. So that means that it's very difficult to get from developers or landowners any park space because they're, for their return of investment, which is understandable on their side, they would rather make their footprint as large as possible. But it becomes very, very difficult to get parkland from them. So what we get is cash in lieu of parkland. So it's a very difficult, vicious cycle that will continue. And unfortunately, as long as Bill 23 is in the works, it's going to, as far as I'm concerned, it's going to get worse. So that's my comment on that. I agree with Charlotte with all gender washrooms, and I know that is being looked into, and hopefully retrofitted along the line, and definitely have them in new spaces. But I fully support that we should have at least one all gender washroom available at every public site that we have that offers washroom facilities. And then the last question that I have perhaps Ms. Darby can answer this. Do we have any programming? Does community services, and I don't want to put you in the spot here, you can always get back to me on this, but does community services, do we offer any sports for disabled or developmentally disabled residents?
I'd have to follow up with the manager of recreation on that.
Thank you. I'd appreciate that. If you could bring it back to me, and then I'll let the rest of the committee know, because I think that's, as the Accessibility Advisory Committee, I think that's an important part of what we should be looking at as well. And it also runs, it runs dovetailing to our DEI strategy. Thank you. Councillor Davidson, did you have your hand up, or was it a mistake?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay.
And thank you for the presentation through you, Madam Chair. I agree with what you said, Karen. It's ludicrous to me that we're increasing densities, in particular, building up, and less parkland, which means we're going to have more places people live without a backyard, and we're going to curb the parkland. It seems ludicrous to me. But that was going to be my question, and I probably know the answer, but is there any way that council through the planning department can encourage even a small courtyard in a big condo, or green spaces that maybe that they're not really taking seriously? And I bring that up because there's so much being written now, especially in the US, about how tiny little spaces of green do the heart good. And for people who maybe have mobility issues, and we're all getting older, and I think there's going to be more and more of us with mobility issues, is there a way for the city to either compel or entice the developers that are building these massive condo units and even townhouses and infill to provide green spaces? They don't even have to be fancy, just spaces that are park but not part of the Richmond Hill plan. Like, does park always have to be on the shoulders of the taxpayers, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, like a respite area. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Ms. Darby, any comment?
Yeah, so we have direction in our parks plan and also in the center specific OPAs that I think they were at council yesterday, if I am remembering that right.
Yes, that was quite a meeting.
We have direction in our parks plan in those new OPAs and the base OP for urban plazas, they're called, which would be a privately owned, publicly accessible space that the developer provides. We do have direction in our parks plan to give a community benefit charge credit towards those spaces where developers decide to provide them. So that's a financial incentive if they decide to do that. And just to your further point about providing enough space at grade in these new high density developments, we are working with the comprehensive zoning bylaw team and development planning application by application to ensure that a certain amount of landscaped open space, we called it outdoor amenity area is the term in the zoning bylaw, is provided per unit. But as that bylaw comes forward, it's quite possible council might decide that it needs to be increased in certain areas of the centers and corridors, particularly if it's the areas where we're seeing that there's going to be a decrease in public parkland being able to be provided.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Can you just tell folks on this call, on this meeting, who may not know what OPA is, when you talk about we're working on the OPA, can you just tell them what that means?
Yeah, so the city has an official plan which guides growth and development across municipality all the way to 2051. I think the new one is now going to. And we call it OPA, Official Plan Amendment, when the city brings forward amendments to that plan, which the city's doing right now for certain of the centers along Yonge Street and other growth areas to basically conform to the upper level plans. Yeah.
Sorry, Carrie, through you, Madam Chair. Thank you. That was my question. That sounds like a step in the right direction. And I really think developers themselves will really be missing something if they don't see the people who are coming to buy and live there are expecting some accessible green spaces. So, all right, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Davidson. It's a great point, and I think as we also found during COVID, during our lockdowns, how important our green spaces and outdoor spaces really are to human beings. So you're absolutely right. Thank you. Okay, Sherry, go ahead on the. Councillor Davidson.
I'm so sorry. Through you, Madam Chair, if I still have a few minutes. I do have a question. The beginning of COVID, through you, Madam Chair, we were plowing some of the nature trails around Richmond Hill and here in Oak Ridges. And then maybe 2 winters ago, there's a sign, at your own risk, this is not maintained. Through you, is it possible to provide plowed ways so people can actually use some of our trails in the wintertime? I'm not asking why it changed. I'm just wondering if that's in the works for the future.
I think I can answer that. And Ms. Darby,
yeah.
you can chime in if you want to. So a couple of things. It was some of the winter groomed trailways were removed because of funding, because of budgetary constraints. But I can tell you that what is going to be brought forward to our operating budget this year, and we're about to go into the budget process for other members of committee, just to let you know, is that earlier on this year, I asked for a feasibility study to be done to also, as a result of people asking for more outdoor space from COVID, the South Richvale Greenway. Can we winterize it? Can we make it 365 days available? So but if I remember correctly, I remember that what was said in that meeting was when it comes to the budget discussion about it, there will also be the discussion as to how we can look at all other trailways and area and green space areas around the city, especially some of those in Ward 1, that could also possibly be winterized.
Okay, thank you. Great.
Sure.
Thanks.
Ms. Darby, do you want to add anything, or am I good? Okay. All right, Sherry, it's yours.
I just wanted to ask if you're having budget constraints, but you still wanted to make some of the older parks accessible, if the city looks to other means of like accessible standards grants or jumpstart grants. Does the community need to be involved like for those kind of things, or is there any way to make sure that we meet the important accessibility needs even with limited budget by reaching out?
Yeah, that's a great question. And Ms. Darby, is there, I'm sure we must do that. We must make sure that we are looking at all kinds of funding opportunities for us to ensure that we can do whatever we need to do, even if we are under financial constraints.
Yes, so we work with staff in the city manager's office. They look out for grants that the city can apply towards various of the projects that we have in the capital plan, not just parks. But we have been successful in getting some for the repair and replacement projects. But that being said, if committee members ever come across a grant that they think the city could apply towards, I'd say just send it through to Ryan and he can send it through to staff to look into that further. Because we will take any grant at this point.
That's a great idea. Thank you, Sherry. Yeah, absolutely. Anybody on committee, if you know or you see or you hear of anything that we could use in this respect, absolutely. Sherry, do you have anything further?
No, that's all. Thank you. I'm glad you're already doing that, and I will keep a lookout.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so once again, on the first round, not seeing anybody. Councillor Thompson, do you want to add anything?
Actually, yes, I wouldn't mind. Something Shayla said really resonates with me, and I have to ask the question as to why, or perhaps maybe the act doesn't, speak to this. But when Ms. Dobby mentioned that we don't have this in our policies, then it started to make me think, okay, so the act obviously isn't addressing it if it's not a requirement to be in our policies, but maybe it's something where we, the councils, should be looking at incorporating that into our policies, because I definitely get it. I mean, there's going to be a number of situations where people are unable to use the facilities on their own, and they, require assistance. In which case, we need to be able to accommodate those individuals. So it's, I don't know if Ms. Dobby wants to speak to that. Am I correct in saying there's nothing in the act that, is requiring us in that respect?
Sure, go ahead, Ms. Dobby.
I'm not aware of anything for parks. There might be things for buildings specifically. But we can look into that further if you'd like, just to confirm that. I can confirm that with infrastructure delivery, that there's nothing specific related to parks.
Mm-hmm. Definitely appreciate that. And I think, for us as council, it's something we should be looking into.
Excellent point. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Anything further? Okay, thank you. Okay, so last call for anybody who wants to speak on the first round. Seeing none, Deputy Clerk Ban, nobody in council chambers. Are we good? Okay, thank you. So on the floor, moved by Councillor Davidson, we have agenda item 6.1, implementing the 2022 Parks Plan, presentation by Michelle Dobby, Manager, Park and Natural Heritage Planning. There it is on the screen. And that all comments be referred back to staff. So, and also that we receive, of course, this presentation with thanks. Could I have, by a show of hands, please, all those who would like to move this forward? Anybody opposed? Seeing none, I believe that carries unanimously. Mr. Ban, thank you. Okay, on to our next presentation. Thank you very much, Ms. Dobby.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item 6.2 is about site plan approval process and considerations. And our presentation this afternoon is by Sandra DeMaria, Manager, Development, and Hubert Ng, who's our Manager for Transportation and Traffic. Welcome to both of you, and thank you so much for joining us today. You have a 15-minute presentation, and we are looking very forward very forward to see the presentation. Thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Silovitz, Chair, and thank you to the Accessibility Advisory Committee for having us here today. We look forward to presenting to you and giving you basically an overview of how development planning and infrastructure and engineering services reviews site plan applications. So I'm going to go to the next slide, please. So site plan control is pursuant to Section 41 of the Planning Act. So Section 41 of the Planning Act gives us control over specific areas of the city or types of development that are required to be reviewed through site plan application. It can be an amendment or a full new site plan application. In accordance with the Planning Act, Section 41 does describe development as constructing, erecting, or placing one or more buildings or structures on land. There are some exclusions to that. It also includes additions or alterations to a building or structure that significantly increases the size or usability. It also includes establishing a commercial parking lot and any changes to that parking lot. So removing parking spaces, any changes to accesses, those would also require an applicant or landowner to go through site plan approval or site plan amendment application. All new construction and or additions, modifications to an industrial, commercial, institutional, mixed use, and multi-residential development is also considered development and would require a site plan application or site plan amendment. I would like to note at this point of the slide that site plan control does not include the review of the interior of buildings. So the floor plans, the design and layout of the interior of a building is not governed through site plan control. For that, that is governed by the building code, and any aspects or characteristics that are under AODA would be reviewed under the building code. Next slide, please.
Sandra, if I may, just so that the members of the committee who are not councillors know this as well, site plan follows on the plan of subdivision applications. Is that it? Can you explain that a little bit for them?
So I can. So site plan applications actually don't necessarily have to follow a plan of subdivision. Okay. You can have a site plan application on a site that's already a site of record, that somebody would like to build a small commercial building or an industrial building. Previously, and I'll get into that later, we did have areas of the city. We still do have some areas that are under site plan control for residential development. So it doesn't necessarily have to be as a result of a draft plan of subdivision. The result of that is usually when a lot is created, and then they would like to, an applicant would like to develop a site individually once the lot is created through a draft plan of subdivision. I hope that helps explain. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So there have been recent changes to site plan applications, and this is through provincial legislation that has recently come down upon us, and that was Bill 23, the More Homes Built Faster Act, as well as Bill 97, Helping Home Buyers Protecting Tenants Act. And this resulted in a few changes to the city's ability to, with site plan control. So areas that we were able to put site plan control over, and some of the scope of our review. So more particularly, Bill 23 removed the site plan control that the city was able to implement for any residential development of up to 10 units. So right now, any development on a lot of record that they would like to develop for 10 units or less, they no longer need to go through site plan approval. So the city has no control in that regard anymore. But then Bill 97 came in and then allowed us to put site plan control back onto certain areas where a property is either abutting a railway or is within 120 meters of a shoreline. And how we define a shoreline is any large body of water. And so going back to the previous presentation, we referred to the official plan. Michelle referred to the official plan. So in our official plan, we do have schedules which identify larger bodies of water, and that would be Bond Lake, Lake Wilcox. Any property that is within 120 meters of that shoreline would be required to go through site plan approval. And that's more so for residential development. Any industrial and commercial or mixed use development was always subject to site plan control with or without Bill 23. But what Bill 23 also did to those developments is it removed our power to regulate exterior design, with the exception of any public housing, for example. Those types of things, we were able to implement our powers on that. And these have all been implemented. Our site plan control bylaw has since been amended to recognize these legislative changes. Next slide, please. So the changes to site plan control have, these legislative changes, and one that I did not mention was Bill 109. So the result of Bill 109, which basically included a refund policy. So it imposed a time limit, a statutory time limit on how long the development or the city has to issue approval. And that's very difficult for us because, for example, with a site plan application, we only have, if we go by the statutory timelines, from the moment it's received and the city deems the application complete, and I'll get into a little bit later when an application is deemed complete, we have 60 days to issue approval. And so with Bill 109, it says if we don't issue approval within those 60 days, we will then be required to begin refunding some of those application fees, which, under budget constraints, that can be an issue in operating and how we operate the city. So there were some implications with that. So what was done, and this was actually done York region wide, all municipalities within Ontario really, have had to pivot, and we've all revised our site plan review and approval process. And so in July of 2023, we brought forward a report to council to endorse our new review and approval process, which we refer to as CAP, which is the collaborative application process. And I won't get into too much of the weeds of that, but I will describe that it's a 3-phase development application review and approval process. And the following slides, I will get into each phase of that process. And I will advise that site plan approval was not exempt from that. It's also subject to this new review and approval process. Next slide, please. So phase 1, which is it hasn't changed. Phase 1 is a practice that we currently have. It's our pre-submission meeting. So any landowner who wishes to develop their property, they are required to meet with staff. So we call that a pre-submission meeting. And so they can do all this online. It is also in the Planning Act, and we also have it in our official plan document, which requires applicants to meet with staff. They meet with staff. They basically present their development proposal to staff. We meet with them and we provide them with some feedback. We basically say to them, please keep in mind, you'll need this many parking spaces. This is what the property is zoned for. This is what you're permitted to do. Your development is either in line with our policies or not in line with our policies. And we then take that concept that they provide to us and we present it to a development application review committee. We refer to them internally as our DARC committee. And that's made up of all of our internal departments and divisions, as well as some external agencies such as York Region and the TRCA. Following this internal meeting, staff will they will prepare a pre-submission response letter. And that letter is quite detailed. We've actually been commented and complimented on the level of detail that we provide in those letters, because those letters will actually outline to the prospective developer or landowner all of the applications that they will be required to submit to facilitate their development, as well as all of the studies supporting plans, studies, documents, anything that they would need to give to us to review for feasibility. So that letter is quite detailed. They will have this in hand, and this allows them to prepare for phase 2. Next slide, please. So phase 2 now is we're still not at the point of actually submitting a Planning Act site plan application. It's what we call a pre-application submission. So the applicant will prepare all of their supporting plans, documents, studies, and they submit that to the city in a pre-application submission package, if you will. Staff review it for completeness and for quality. And when I say quality, this is a new part of our review and approval process, in that we want to ensure that our applicants are giving us high quality studies and plans. What we were finding is that we were receiving these submissions, and a lot of the time really fundamental information was missing. And it ended up being a back and forth with the applicant or the developer saying, we don't have this information, we cannot properly review this application, we need this and we need that. So with this quality control step, it allows us to weed out all of that stuff before we actually take staff's time in reviewing the full submission. So once we deem the application, or not the application, the submission complete for quality, we then circulate it, and we circulate it to internal divisions, departments, external agencies for their review. I would like to say that this part of this 3-phase process is quite vigorous. This is when we go back and forth with the applicant. There may be up to 3 submissions. That's what we're hoping for. Sometimes it goes a little bit beyond that, and there are some exceptions. But that is the part where we really go back and forth. We often meet with the applicant several times with either different divisions, departments, to really nail down the issues that need to be changed, issues that need to be addressed. This phase 2 is when most of the design and what we call site organization is finalized, including development limits, building envelope, vehicular and pedestrian accesses and connections, and the parking requirements. There are many more, but I'm trying to summarize it for you for the purposes of this presentation. And through phase 2, there are still not any statutory timelines. So it does give us the opportunity to do that very thorough review that we need. Next slide, please. I included this slide just to give the committee an understanding of the level of detail and the level of review that's being conducted by the city and their external partners. So there's all the city departments and divisions that are circulated these applications. It's development planning, which is my group, building services, building and zoning sections, urban design and heritage planning division, parks and natural heritage planning. We've got infrastructure and engineering services, which includes infrastructure planning and development engineering, transportation and traffic, which Hubert's here with, joining me, engineering, subdivision, and infrastructure planning, site plans, and our site alteration section as well. And then two external agencies that we've included here is York Region and Toronto Region Conservation Authority, but there are times where we need to circulate to Metrolinx. It really just depends on the location of the site. Next slide, please. So this brings me to phase 3. So at the end of phase 2, the idea is that the applicant will have what we call an approval in principle. So we will have tied up all the loose ends. Staff will be, for the most part, satisfied with the site plan. They've addressed all of our comments and concerns. And now that gives us the opportunity to allow them to apply for their Planning Act site plan application. The clock is ticking, and then we can take them through the final approval process. And this is the very important part of the process, because this is where we can actually secure all of the Planning Act requirements. So for example, we allow that we enter into a site plan agreement with the applicant, which becomes registered on title. That binds them to all the approved plans, clauses, conditions. We attach all those drawings to this agreement. We sometimes will secure a letter of credit to ensure that the works are all done to the city's satisfaction. And that letter of credit only gets released once the city has inspected the works and we are sure that they are done to our satisfaction. So that is the new review and approval process. But I'm now going to turn it over to Hubert, who's going to give you an example of a site plan and give you sort of a taste of how we review these site plans, with a lot of focus on the AODA Act and how we implement that. So I'll turn it over to Hubert now.
All right, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. As mentioned earlier, I'm Hubert Dane, Manager of Transportation Traffic at the City of Richmond Hill. And part of my team's mandate is really to carry out some technical reviews of site plans, and some of which include accessibility elements. And these reviews are based on requirements of the province's Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, which is also known as AODA, as well as the city's municipal code. Our review encompasses two key accessibility elements that include exterior paths of travel and accessible parking spaces. And please note that our review excludes the review of building interiors, as Sandra had mentioned a little bit earlier, but we do also review above grade or underground parking areas as well. And part of our review for key accessibility elements for exterior paths of travel, we would like to ensure that adequate clear widths and sufficient heights are provided for pedestrian walkways. We make sure that the slopes of walkways and ramps are not excessive. We make sure that ramps and handrails are also provided where necessary. And of course, that curb depressions with tactile plate indicators are provided at pedestrian crosswalks as well. Next slide, please. So in terms of accessible spaces, that's the other key element that we review. And accessible spaces are provided in locations that are close to the building entrance. We make sure that always happens. That an adequate number of accessible parking spaces are provided. Accessible parking spaces have adequate dimensions.
Okay, carry on. Carry on.
Okay, thank you. I'll keep this really short.
It's okay. Go ahead.
And an accessible aisle is typically required to be provided next to these accessible spaces for wheelchair access. And accessible parking spaces should have proper signage and pavement markings to designate that they are accessible spaces. Next slide, please. And now that we've gone through some key accessibility elements that we typically review, we thought it'd be a good idea to provide an example at the Farm Boy grocery store at 12270 Yonge Street, just to demonstrate the finished product. And as part of this application, we protected for a pedestrian walkway along the building frontage that has sufficient clear width with a pedestrian crossing opportunity with appropriate curb depressions and tactile plates to connect the building over to the accessible spaces. And as you can see, we've illustrated this in plan view as well as a photograph from the parking area looking towards the Farm Boy building. So that illustrates some of these key elements. Next slide, please. And we also ensured that the appropriate number of accessible parking spaces have been provided and are as close to the building entrance as possible. We made sure that the accessible aisles are present beside the spaces to accommodate wheelchairs, and signage and pavement markings are also in place to designate these spaces. And that sums up my part of the presentation. Hopefully this provides a better understanding of accessible elements that are protected for through the site plan process. And with that, I'll pass it back to Sandra.
I do think that wraps up our presentation. It was to just demonstrate, I guess, to the committee that we are doing a quite vigorous review of each site plan. We are taking a look and we are ensuring that some of the AODA elements and characteristics are incorporated and enforced on the site. I did one thing I did not mention in my presentation is site plans are actually not, do not undergo a public process. So there is no ability for the public we don't have public meetings for site plans. So the opportunity to really ensure that the AODA components are being addressed is at a staff level, and we are quite comprehensive in our review. So I'll pass it back to the chair for any questions by the committee.
Thank you very much, both of you. Greatly appreciated. It's an excellent presentation. And let's see. I see Councillor Davidson's hand is up. Will you bring the matter forward for discussion as well, Councillor Davidson? Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Excellent presentations. And all I can say for folks on this committee, it's really hard to get this stuff into bite-sized pieces that you understand. And I'm super excited about these presentations and the slides. And thank you, staff. And I would love an email with those decks so that I can share with folks to help explain some of the things we're trying to do. I guess this question through you, Madam Chair, is also for people who are part of the committee. When we install a new stoplight, are countdowns and chirps that I tend to only hear at like a medical center, like in Oak Ridges at Regatta and Yonge, are those actually helpful? I'm asking anyone who might find them helpful or not. And if so, is that something that we consider moving forward to make things more accessible for everything Richmond Hill does moving forward?
That's a great question. Hubert, would you like to answer that? I've only heard them on the main regional roads, and I think we should have more of them. I think you're right.
If they're helpful, I can't speak
yes.
for folks. Like, I'd like to hear from somebody on the committee if they find them helpful.
Yeah, totally agreed. Do you want to make any comments, Mr. Ng?
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that comment and questions about accessibility aspects through traffic signals. And I think as at a high level, they certainly are helpful. And that certainly provides additional guidance for those that requires additional guidance to help cross the road or know when it's the right time to cross the road. So that certainly can be considered as part of future traffic signal projects as well in the city.
Thank you.
Thank you. So anybody on committee? Any member of committee would like to make a comment on that, as Councillor Davidson requested? Shala, I see your hand up.
Thank you very much. The the countdown for the traffic that it's right in front of the medical center. I think that it was a month or so ago that I sent some of the concern that we actually tried that, and the time was not enough. And that's why I sent the email with this information. I think it was 2-3 months ago that I sent it to all the members that was one of my concern, that we actually went to pass that. We wanted to see if that countdown is enough. It wasn't enough for my husband.
Interesting. Okay, well, that's the exact comment I expect. Councillor Davidson was looking.
That's valuable. Through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Ng, what are our guidelines for some of the things to know how long they should be? Is that a provincial thing, or how do we know if we think it's long enough, but somebody actually using it doesn't?
To you, Madam Chair, that's another excellent question. And we always follow York Region and/or provincial guidelines when it comes to the amount of time that's appropriate to facilitate crossing.
Well, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. That's it for my questions. And I do look forward to those slides if you can share. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davidson. Mr. Ban, are there any hands raised in council chambers? No?
No, there are not.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I just have a couple of comments then, seeing no other hands raised for this first round. I think I find it interesting with the new site plan controls about the 10 units or less. I find that very interesting. And it's all very well if you're abutting a railway or abutting a shoreline. I don't understand really it's just a comment here. I don't understand what the difference is if you're not. Mr. Demiria, can you explain that a little bit more? Is there some specificity of language that they chose because of that?
So there's not much, to be honest with you, but how we interpret it is that the shoreline, it would be basically to be able to govern, flooding. When we site plan approval, we are able to put in clauses, conditions, things to mitigate any flooding, hazards, things like that. So that would have been the purpose of adding in now the shoreline and the 120 meters to a shoreline provision now, or that legislation to allow us and give the city the authority to put those properties under site plan control. With regard to the rail, that would be for noise. So if we don't put them through site plan approval, we wouldn't have a means to mitigate the noise component, depending on the type of development. So that's where the rationale, there was no explanation in the legislation. It was more just, this is what you're allowed to do now. But I think that's how we've made sense with that legislation.
No, I agree. That's great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And the other thing I just wanted to comment on is the manner in which Bill 23 has reduced our ability to ensure that urban design criteria are in keeping with what the city envisions. I know we have a very extensive document, which is the urban design guidelines, which are supposed to be referenced by developers. And Mr. Maria, does this mean that, just to confirm in my own head and perhaps for others, that where this has been removed, urban design guidelines, does that mean that we have absolutely no say on what kind of urban design is going to be put into that particular building? Or I imagine it's not the exterior, the land, it's just the building. Do we not have? Do we now have absolutely no say in that? I find that horrifying.
We do actually. We can still make comments on the site organization, the design, accesses. Where we are limited is the exterior color, material, to that extent. But we can still make those comments, and we are still providing recommendations, if you will, but we have no way of actually enforcing it or implementing different colors or material that we would like to see on the exterior of those buildings. But absolutely, site organization, design of the site, we are still very much in our right to provide those comments and implement that.
Okay, thank you. That helps just a tiny bit. I appreciate that. Okay, so again, one last time. Councillor Thompson, do you want to add anything? You're on mute, sir.
Okay, thank you. I definitely echo what you have to say, Madam Chair, in regards to the impact that Bill 23 has. And for somebody, myself, who lives in the village core area and how it's basically taken away the village core neighborhood design guidelines is, yeah, that really hurts the vision that we have for our heritage district area. But I am happy to hear that you're saying that you can still put the bug in the developer's ears and to say that, you need to, or you should, would, I know those words, should, shall, must, all that type of stuff. Well, yeah, I'm happy to hear that you're still able to at least try and make some effect in that regard. So that would be my comments. But yeah, I have the same fears that you have, Councillor Silovitz. It's not a good outcome for anybody, in my opinion. So
it just makes our job so much more difficult. That's for sure. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Appreciate it. Okay, so last call for round one. No one? Seeing none? Okay, so we have a motion on the floor moved by Councillor Davidson. Item 6.2. Could we see it on the screen, please, Mr. Ban? At the presentation by Sandra De Maria, Manager Development, and Hubert Ng, Manager Transportation and Traffic, regarding the site plan approval process and considerations be received with thanks, and all comments be referred back to staff. Perfect. Okay. All those in favor, please just raise your hands. Thank you. Anybody opposed? Seeing none, I assume that passes unanimously. Thank you very much, members of committee. Okay, so in keeping with our agenda, 6.3, and thank you once again to Sandra and Hubert. Greatly appreciate your presentations and your input here. Thank you so much. 6.3, proposed 2024 Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting schedule. And I trust that everybody on committee has had a look at these dates for 2024. And does anybody have any comments? Any dates are just absolute no-goes, or you want to have, if you want to make any kind of comment whatsoever? Seeing none on the call, Mr. Ban, anybody in council chambers?
Sure, no one, Council Chambers.
Okay, give me 1 sec. I've got to go all the way back here. Okay. Okay. Sorry, one moment. Okay, if you could put that on the screen. Is it, sorry, Councillor Davidson, did you want to say something?
Sorry, after we do
Okay.
this, I wanted to ask something. Sorry about that.
That's
I'll
okay.
lower this.
Okay, Sherry, you have a comment?
Yes, I'm new to the committee, but I wanted to ask about the time. Is this committee always at 3 o'clock, or could it be done earlier in the day?
It's a great question. Mr. Ban, can you help me with that? I know that I think we voted on that, didn't we, to have it at 3 o'clock?
It's through the chair to committee member Caldwell. So at the beginning of this year, the vote was only to determine start times for this year. So if you look at clause B, it says that AAC is to determine the start time for next year. So that is certainly in play. All other committees typically start at 1:30 p.m. AAC is at 3, but I would say if the committee member is willing to move, we can move to accept clause A, and that for clause B, we can change it to 1:30 as an amendment, and then go from there to see if that works for everybody.
Okay, Sherry, how do you feel about that? I mean, from my personal
Um,
perspective, I'm okay with 3, but we can put that on the floor if you want to have a discussion.
Well, I'm new, so I respect it's important that everyone can be there. I just have caregiving duties, but I will make it work, whatever is available.
Okay, and if any day specifically if any meeting for a day is specifically very difficult for you, let me know. Shoot me an email, and the deputy clerk, and we will definitely attend to that. You know what I mean? If there's something we can do, we will do, and if it becomes a problem, that a consecutive problem, then we can definitely look at putting something on the floor that we can change the time or just amend the time. Councillor Davidson, did you want to add something?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I was just going to say, is it a big deal to just hold a vote and ask if people want to move it to 1:30?
Well, it's not on the agenda.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. I understand. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
And let me know when I can make a comment about something else. Thank you.
Okay. So could I have, having had that discussion, we will keep that in mind, Sherry, okay? We have agenda item 6.3, the proposed 2024 Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting schedule. Be approved. B, that the Accessibility Advisory Committee determine the start time for Accessibility Advisory Committee meetings. Oh, it's there. 1 second. Mr. Ban, can you help me, please? I didn't realize that it was actually there.
Through the chair. So, Committee Member Caldwell, if you're willing to move the motion that I have on the screen, just give me 1 second while I bring it up here for everyone to see. So we can certainly say that for Clause A, the 5 dates for 2024 that proposed be approved, and then the start time for those meetings be at 1:30. So that can go forward as a motion, and then if anybody wants to make an amendment to a different time or whatever it is, that could happen. But I think this is probably a good place to start.
Okay, thank you. So let's backtrack just a smidge here. Sherry, do you want to bring the item forward that's on the screen, 6.3? And I'll bring it to the floor for discussion, and then we can have a discussion about B.
Sure, but I don't want to push the new time on everyone because it's like a group decision. I was just asking, it's just an inquiry, but it's important that everyone is able to be there. So
no, I agree, and that's why it's so now we can actually have a discussion about it. That's great. Thank you. Okay, if I could go back to my full screen, please, Mr. Ban. I saw Councillor Davidson's hand was up.
Thank you. To the chair, just really quick, just to confirm. So, Committee Member Caldwell, in order for us to have this discussion, it needs to be moved. So, were you good to move the motion that was up there?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much. Councillor Davidson.
Thank you. I'm all for a vote, and I'm good either way. But I think now that we've had through you, Madam Chair, since we've had a few meetings now, people might find another time better. So I appreciate just even asking the question, so that this is a group that is heard. The other thing I wanted to ask, I don't know if this is we're already talking about this motion, right?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
So I feel like it's not necessarily clear to committee members why we had the briefing on the planning process. And in my opinion, I believe, isn't it to sort of say that members of this committee can have input, or members of this committee can offer their opinions? Like, why did we learn so much about planning today? I'm through you, Madam Chair.
Okay, that's a good point. I don't mind going back to that. We have moved past it, but I don't mind going back to it. It's a good point. Mr. Deputy Clerk, can you help with that answer? Because I want to make sure that we give the committee the correct answer.
Thank you. Through the chair to the committee. So part of the AODA, specifically under section 29, speaks to the duties of the committee. So part of the duties, and just actually just to read it to you. So subsection B of that states that the committee shall review in a timely manner the site plans and drawings described in section 41 of the Planning Act that the committee selects. So the committee is able to state, hey, you know what, there is a site plan that we would like to review in order for us to provide input. So part of the reason for the presentation today was there had been previously some discussion in regards to accessible parking in terms of accessibility in commercial areas. And the intent of the presentation was to describe and explain to the committee what the city does and the other stakeholders involved in determining what goes into, I guess, designing the external or I guess to a site plan. So the committee does have the ability to select something. At the same time, city staff do provide and from time to time present for committee's input different, I guess, projects that are happening within the city. So for instance, something like a public open design. So something like a public park, which may or may not be a site plan that the city has to, I guess, work on, is presented to committee. So that part of the reason was to say, hey, you know what, this is what we do. And, you know, the city staff will be presenting from time to time site plans. Again, as well, this committee does have options to select site plans for review, but with the new CAP process that is in place, it's just to walk committee through what actually happens currently, because previously was something else.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Great. Thank you. I appreciate the clarification. Appreciate the presentations. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davidson. Okay, so we have on the floor 6.3, and what I would like to know is there any discussion on the floor about changing the time to committee meetings for 1:30? Anybody want to have a discussion on that before we have a vote on it? I'm with Councillor Davidson. It makes no difference to me. We're available for meetings, so we're it. So, but of course, everybody else on committee who is not a council member, you do have different commitments. So, whose hand did I see going up? Shala?
It was me, but sorry, I thought that you are voting, so that's why
Okay.
I wait for vote.
Okay. Mr. Ban, is there anybody in council chambers who wishes to add anything? Okay. So if we could have that back on the screen, please. Moved by Councilmember Sherry Caldwell. Agenda item 6.3. A, that the proposed 2024 meeting schedule for the Accessibility Advisory Committee be approved, and B, that the Accessibility Advisory Committee start time for Accessibility Advisory Committee meetings for 2024 be 1:30 p.m. Okay, so we have that on the floor by a show of hands, please, for approval. Please raise your hands. Okay, I think I'm seeing everybody. Anybody no? No, I think we're good. Mr. Ban, is that unanimous for council chambers as well? Okay, so that passes unanimously. We have changed the time to 1:30, and we will relook at it again next year when this matter comes up again. And if any other changes have to be made, they will be made. But I'm very pleased we could do that. Okay, so just let me go back to where we are here. Okay, so Mr. Ban, before we get to the date of the next meeting, do you want to go to what we added? The presentation to be added? Or do you want to do that after?
I think you through the chair, I guess, just for the public record. So committee voted by majority to add this item as a item of business. So we do have the presenters here, so I can pull them up, but just for everyone's second.
Refresh. If you could refresh, yeah, that'd be great.
There we go. Okay, so this is a presentation by Mayan Ziv from RH Mobility regarding programs for park accessibility. So I'm just going to get them set up, and then we will start if committee's good with that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, we can see it on the screen. That's excellent. Thank you and welcome to the presenter, Mayan Zerv. We look forward to your presentation.
Oh, thank you very much. My name is Andrew Fisher. I am the chairman of the Richmond Hill Mobility Accessibility Foundation. I am here today with Mayan, who is who is with Access Now, an organization that she is the sole founder of. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about RH Mobility, about our foundation. And the best way to describe that is through our mandate or our mission statement: to provide Richmond Hill community with resources and leadership that would facilitate accessibility to all its citizens with disabilities. Richmond Hill Mobility's ultimate goal is to ensure that through its efforts, the city of Richmond Hill strives to be a barrier-free community. So I'm going to tell you about RH Mobility, and then Mayan, who is with Access Now, the organization, is going to come up here and tell you about Access Now. And she's also going to describe the project that we are involved in. And we are involved with Access Now as well as the city is involved. So first, I'm just going to give you a little bit of history of about RH Mobility. It was founded in 1999 by Barry Monroe and the late Dave Barrows, Mayor Dave Barrows. It was originally formed they noticed a need for accessibility for people with mobility issues to get around. We held a gala. It was recently after the Olympics. Elvis Stoichel came and we raised enough money to buy 2 accessible vans for Richmond Hill Transit. Well, after that, RH Mobility realized that they had the potential to do more and to help Richmond Hill with more than just transportation. Our second endeavor was Crosby Park. We were spearheaded the construction and the renovation of Crosby Park to make it accessible. That was in 2004. We raised over $500,000 to help with the city to create Crosby Park. So since then, we have moved on. One of the greatest things about RH Mobility is our funding sources. And we have to add this, we owe this all to the late Mayor Dave Barrows, who was a councillor at the time. He brought a motion towards to City Council, and City Council accepted it. And what it amounts to is what we call the sorry, give me a second here. It's a disability parking bylaw. And what this bylaw is, it's really cool. For any person that parks in a disabled handicap spot in Richmond Hill, it's a $300 fine. The municipal government, Richmond Hill town, they take 50% of that and they put it into a reserve, so that charities like RH Mobility can draw from that as long as the money is put back into Richmond Hill towards accessibility and inclusion. So Richmond Hill gets a draw from that every year, and we can put that towards our funding. We are a funding agency, and I want to touch on that when I'm done my little presentation here. It won't be long. We have several programs. We have a gym subsidy that's available to any Richmond Hill resident with a disability. It's a $45 6-month registration subsidy for a membership to any of the fitness centers. It involves, you can get a pool pass and you can get involved with that. RH Mobility has funded a lot of accessible exercise equipment to the Ed Sackfield Fitness Center. So anybody that has a disability that would like to access a really good environment for exercising, the Ed Sackfield Arena their fitness center is very well equipped. We have a adaptive devices program. The financial burden caused by assisted devices can create challenging financial times for many families. RH Mobility designates a portion of our funding to help subsidize mobility equipment that is geared towards an active life. We have community programs for accessibility and mobility. RH Mobility is currently working with the City of Richmond Hill's Parks and Recreation Department to implement additional programs for persons and people with disabilities. We help with training of people to work one-on-one with children in the summer with the children's programs. We work with Jennifer Anderson to supply them with tangible items. We usually kind of alternate year after year. And I'd like to mention those are two great presentations before us. I was especially interested in the one that Michelle gave, the first one. Like I said, we're a funding agency, so please don't be afraid to approach us for any project that you have in mind or anything that you think in Richmond Hill that needs to be addressed. Please approach us. We are in the midst of right now. I just found out yesterday that our community center in Richmond Hill in Oak Ridges needs a new change table, excuse me, for clients who want to use the gym. And we are going to fund that, and nobody knows that yet. So you're fortunate to be let in on the information there. Anyways, today we're here to discuss our connection with Access Now. So one of our additional programs happens to be with Access Now. And at this point in time, I just wanted to say, I did already told you about mine. She's going to come up here and tell you a little bit about Access Now and about the project that we are in the midst of completing. And that's about all I have to say. Once again, we're from RH Mobility. Don't forget us. Well, Barry's now a member here, so that's great. He's on our board of directors. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, committee members, for letting us do this presentation today.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay. Mayan Zev is coming up next. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm just going to shift this if that's okay.
That's okay. Councillor Davidson, I saw your hand, not to worry.
Thanks so much. All right. Good afternoon, Chair and Committee. My name is Mayan Ziv. I'm thrilled to be here. I know we don't have much time, and I appreciate you fitting us into your schedule today. So I'm really excited to share with you a little bit about the work that is already happening here in Richmond Hill. So next slide. Next slide. Next slide. All right, so my name is Mayan Ziv. I am the founder and CEO of Access Now. If you're not able to see me, I am sitting in a power wheelchair. I'm also a resident of Richmond Hill, so this is something I'm really excited to be able to share in my own hometown. At Access Now, we are on a mission to establish the world's go-to resource for accessibility information. Next slide. And we do this by sharing credible, reliable, trustworthy data about accessible places and experiences around the world. We do this in partnership with organizations, municipalities, for-profit and nonprofit organizations that are able to verify and share information about the accessibility of places in their own communities and areas. And we also connect directly with visitors, with people with and without disabilities who are accessing the Access Now mobile app in order to find information about how accessible the places that they want to go to actually are. It's an entirely free app. It will always remain free for anyone who needs it. Next slide. And so the way that it works is really that we engage community members to share information. It is entirely driven by people who share their own lived experiences of access, whether it is to go to a park, a restaurant, City Hall, it could be any location. And we're verifying that information by engaging with community. Next slide. And a big focus for us within the Access Now platform is the outdoors. So quite relevant to many of the conversations had today. We recognize that the accessibility of outdoor spaces is also often lacking, and that many people with disabilities, family members, et cetera, are experiencing tremendous anxiety about actually engaging in outdoor spaces because they don't have the proper information to make informed decisions. Next slide. And so to date, what we've done on the Access Now app is assessed over 180 trails, actually across Canada entirely, over 1,000 kilometers, and worked with over 100 different mappers with and without disabilities. We've also engaged with guides and often folks directly involved with trail properties and city staff. Next slide. And it's all done through the Access Now app. It's a specific collector tool that we use. And we actually are able to survey lands based on the accessibility of specific features that are highlighted, from the terrain, the quality of the texture of the ground, the grade and slope, amenities, access points, any points of interest, hazards, or closures that people might notice when they're navigating trails or park experiences. Next slide. And the exciting thing about this is that this is already happening in Richmond Hill. We've already been able to collaborate with the RH Mobility Foundation and the city to map a series of trails across Richmond Hill that are showcased on the slide right now. This was done in collaboration with people with lived experience of disability or family and friends, as well as staff at Access Now and staff members from Richmond Hill. Next slide. And this is just a quick screenshot. Members from your actual committee were involved in helping us create this work of the Saigon Trail, where we were able to map the entirety of every access point, every barrier, every segment of the trail that we identified accessibility barriers. This is live, it's free, it's already on Access Now app. Whether you access it through the website or on the mobile app, it's both in English and French. People can go and understand exactly what they're facing, and they are also encouraged to contribute their own reviews. And the idea behind the work that we do, next slide, is to be able to get more advanced understanding about where barriers are, what people with disabilities are experiencing in their communities, and actually inform future development. So earlier in today's call, I heard a question about which parks or which areas should we improve access on. The type of data that we collect is actually working to help inform those decisions. We've got clear data that helps outline exactly where the barriers are, how much of a lift or how easy it is for those barriers to be solved, just based on the complexity of understanding where they are and what people have shared. And the more feedback we get directly from community, the more informed we are on which barriers should be addressed first and how quickly or simply should we be able to do that. So all of this information has already been shared with the city when it comes to the trails we've already done. And we're really excited to continue this work. Next slide. Because one of the most important things to us, as many folks on the committee may already relate to, is this concept of nothing about us without us. So thanks to the Richmond Hill Mobility Foundation, yes, 1 minute. Thanks to the Richmond Hill Mobility Foundation, we've been able to actually receive funding to do this work, to employ people to do it. It is not based on volunteers. We believe that access is a right and it is a value that all should be able to participate in, and that by engaging people directly in their communities, they can be drivers of change as opposed to consumers of it. Last slide. So in short, I would just like to say thank you for the opportunity to present. Much of the small businesses are already mapped on the app in Richmond Hill, and we're really excited about the next step where we will continue to map parks and trails across Richmond Hill. Hopefully we can do much more together. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Mayan. That was, I'm so glad we added this. What a fantastic piece on our agenda. Thank you so much, both to you and Andrew. Greatly appreciated. And I hope we can include you more often in our meetings. Whenever you have anything that you wish to add or you wish to let us know of, don't hesitate to contact our Deputy Clerk, Ryan Ban, and he will make sure that we get something on the agenda, because this is so critical to the work that we do as this committee on behalf of all the residents out there, most specifically our ones who require this type of assistance. So thank you so much. It's deeply appreciated.
Thank you.
Councillor Davidson, I saw your hand up first. Do you want to move this matter?
I
Thank
will.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, this might also have something to do with a discussion we had at our last meeting at Oak Ridge's pool. Needed a lift or some kind of a swing.
Right.
And maybe the foundation can help us with that if the
Well,
city
they
needs
just said, yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Thank you. Lovely to meet you, folks, and wonderful presentation. I'm the counselor in Ward 1, and the city is going to, this did come up, and I talked to the commissioner right away, and the city is making sure everyone at the pool has training to use the lift, which was one of the problems. I'm a little surprised, frankly, but grateful that the city's not replacing the changing the table, but grateful to you for helping out there. And I guess I wanted to ask this kind of a selfish question, but do you folks have any sway with the region? Because I've been trying to get a crosswalk or a light somewhere along Lake Wilcox Park, because you come around Bayview and you literally see people with walkers and scooters because of mobility issues, and they're trying to beat traffic that's going 20 kilometers. Do you folks get involved at all with crosswalks and safety ways, and specifically a light at Bethesda? I know I'm kind of hogging up group time here, but I would really love to talk to you about what sway you have, because I'm so worried. There's one gentleman in particular who has a speedy wheelchair, and he crosses Bayview. And do you folks do anything like that to make our roads safer?
No,
That's a
we
great
have no
question.
control over that. Sorry.
Just one moment, Andrew. As Simon, I see your hand up, not to worry. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. No, we have no control over that. That would be a city matter that would control like traffic speeds and governing those traffic speeds. I hope that answers your question.
Well,
Highway Traffic Act.
Through you, it does. I guess I'm thinking, do you ever help lobby? Like, I'd be happy to meet you or write a letter with you. I've been banging my head against the wall, mostly with the region, because Bayview, but anyway, we could take this offline. I would just love it if to get more support and try to convince people that somebody who can't outrun an 80 kilometer car is going to get hurt there. So we call ourselves accessible, but we're really not walkable. So anyway, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Davidson. And if you can get in touch with Andrew or Maya offline, and then you can also give us an update on that when you're able. That's very interesting. Thank you. Next person on my speakers list is Simon Waldman. Go ahead, Simon. Shala, you are next.
I just wanted to say, if for anybody that can see here, this is what the Access Now app looks like. You click on the app. It's already told me there's 6 places within less than 200 meters that are accessible. So it's a terrific idea. That's all I just wanted to comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. Yeah, I'm definitely going to download it, and I'm sure that Councillors Davidson and Thompson are going to do the same, and I'm certainly going to send that message out to the rest of council, and I'm going to put it on all of my social media and my website to make sure that people are aware of this particular app and that they can download it, and it's something very, very useful. Because it's not only, in my mind, it's not only if you're disabled, but it's also if you have a stroller with a baby, because that requires the same kind of access, right? Thank you. Okay. Okay, let's go to our next speaker. Shala, go ahead.
Thank you very much. It was a really great presentation. I just have a quick question. There are so many places named accessible when we search, but do you mind if there is anything that, because we are using lots of trail and we use lots of nature, do you mind if there is anything that I go like personally with my husband, do you mind if we send you if there is some concern that the name is accessible but not in reality?
Yeah.
Good point.
So I'm happy to respond to that. So the way that the data is generated on the Access Now platform is through a collaboration of different sources. We start with available data, whether it's in our collaboration with Google Maps or directly in collaboration with municipalities or private organizations that are offering us data. We go through a verified process. But there's also a very important community engagement component to the Access Now app. And that is actually what can influence the ratings. So every rating on Access Now is fluent. It can change at any time based on people's consistent contributions. So if you were to see a rating and disagree with whether it was accessible partially or not, you could actually contribute your own rating, add a description as to why you feel otherwise, and that would influence the overall result. With enough community engagement, we've seen people go from saying that places are accessible to places that are partially or not accessible. And those are actually good ways to create feedback loops that then are communicated to the responsible parties involved. So if you are then talking about a community center where one auditor might have said it's accessible, but 65 residents said otherwise, that feedback going back to the community center would be quite vital to help actually understand how to authentically represent the needs of the community. And that's kind of how we create that feedback loop. The data is what drives the change. So yes, please do share that feedback. If you disagree with any of the ratings, we very much benefit from every rating added.
Thank you very much. That's really helpful. Thanks a lot. I will.
Thank you, Shala. Sherry, I see your hand up next.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for the presentation. I wasn't aware of the Richmond Hill mobility, of the work that you were doing in Richmond Hill. And that was actually my friend's son that had the issue with the change table at the Oak Ridges pool. And it's been an issue for, I think, a few years now. So I think they're going to be delighted that they can get back there and use the pool. So that is like really, really good news.
That's
So
good to
thank
hear.
you.
It's funny, I just found out about that yesterday, so and made the decision. So that's great.
Thank you. Thank you, Sherry. I couldn't agree with you more. Okay, so on the call, the first round, I don't see anybody. Is there anybody else in chambers, Mr. Ban, who wishes to say something?
Through the chair, no.
Okay. Councillor Thompson, do you want to add anything?
Sure. I definitely want to thank the presenters for this. This is very, very good information. I was certainly aware of Crosby Park from our former Ward 2 Councillor Arnie Warner. I know he was involved at the time when that all happened. But this is information that all of council should really be getting on board with. I'm very pleased that I logged in today, that I had the availability to be here today, but this is something that I think all of council should be aware of. I will certainly get this information to my social media, and I appreciate you for bringing this information forward today. Thank you so much.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. And in that vein, the only comment I would like to make and wrap up is to our Deputy Clerk, Ryan Ban. Is there a way that I can, through you, ensure that we perhaps get Andrew and Mayan to present something to council in the future, perhaps in 2024? I don't think we need a motion for that, but I know if I leave it in your capable hands, you can take it to our clerk and we can do something. But I agree with Councillor Thompson, and that the whole of council should know this, as should the whole city.
To the chair, yeah, we will make it much easier knowing that you're coming the next time. But yeah, we will reach out, and if there's something that you would like to share. I mean, I think it's a great news story that the lift
Yeah.
at Oak Ridges is coming, and I think there's bound to be more things. I certainly wasn't aware of Access Now in terms of how far the app has gone. So we can certainly will reach out and make sure we get you for next year.
Thank you. I'll also speak with we'll speak to our communications and make sure that they know about it as well. And perhaps there's a way we can make it more visible on our city website, and also get it into our biannual letter hard copy letter that goes out citywide. So I leave that with me, and I'll deal with that. So again, my thanks to both of you. This has been wonderful to welcome you and to hear your presentations. This is, I think this is what AODA and everything that's coming out of AODA has produced. And it's wonderful to see that in real time, we can actually see the benefits of this to our disabled population, because it is so necessary. So thank you again deeply. So can we have a motion on the floor from Councillor Davidson? Could you put it back on the screen, please, Mr. Ban, just to refresh, because I don't have it in front of me. Okay, there we go. Agenda item 6.4, moved by Councillor Davidson A, that the presentation by Mayan Ziv, Access Now, and Andrew Fisher, RH Mobility, regarding programs for park accessibility be received with thanks. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Absolutely not. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much again. Much appreciated. Okay, so let's go back to our agenda. And the next item on our agenda is adjournment. Is that correct? Just double checking with you, Dan.
Through the chair, just to confirm. So actually the date of the next meeting will very likely be Thursday, February 22, 2024 at 1:30 p.m. We will send confirmation of that.
Thank you very much. That's good. I appreciate that. Does anybody on committee as of today have a problem with that date? I know we've already passed the calendar for 2024, but I just want to make absolutely sure. We're good for Feb 22nd. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Okay, so then our final, you want to say, is there someone who wants to say something? Sorry, in council?
To the chair, just committee member Raifman has just indicated he won't be able to attend that meeting. That's all.
Okay. Not even virtually, Lawrence?
Any date that I can't. Otherwise, all the other dates are fine.
Okay, well, remember that our everything that we do and say here is recorded, and it's archived to our YouTube channel, and you can always watch the meeting either live through the YouTube channel, or you can watch it in its archive.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lawrence. Okay, so could I have someone on committee please move for adjournment? If I can see a hand, anybody's hand. Sherry, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. Adjournment moved by committee member Sherry Caldwell. All those in favor, raise your hands. Thank you very much. That passes unanimously. Thank you to everybody on committee and to all staff members who have participated here, and to Councillor Davidson, who is one of our members, and Councillor Thompson, who always joins us. We're so grateful for your presence. And I know it's a little bit early, but I want to wish everybody a wonderful holiday season. Happy holidays, happy Hanukkah, happy Christmas, happy Kwanzaa, everything that you celebrate. May it be celebrated in peace, happiness, and love. Councillors Davidson and Thompson, would you like to add anything?
Well, I just want to say the same thing. And we've just finished our first year as counselors, and I just want to say thank you to this group. You have taught me a lot. And even though I think I know, I don't know so much. And this committee, I really look forward to participating, because I learn a lot of things every single time. So maybe we're not moving mountains every single time, but you're making an influence on people like me. And I think about it. I think about accessibility, everything I look at now. So I thank you all, and I really appreciate being on this council, and I do wish everyone the best for the rest of the year, and we'll see you next year.
Thank you very much, Councillor Davidson. Councillor Thompson, you good? Okie dokie. We're all good. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. See you February 22nd. Bye-bye. Stay safe.